I just did a 4-day Raw Truth in LA, which was so beautiful and stellar and incredible. We had actors from all over the world who've moved to LA, to be working in the industry there. So it was so fantastic to have so many cultures represented and countries represented, and yeah, once again, what I'll say is having worked in the industry 36 plus years now, and alongside making films since 1996 as an actual director, and then also coaching actors, what I see time and time again is you have to do all of the craft work. You have to know all the given circumstances. You have to know your accent, your gait, like where you're going, what you want, inner obstacles, outer obstacles, your unmet needs, etc. But none of it matters unless the moment that it counts, when you're on set and the camera's rolling, or you're on stage, or you're in the casting room with the director, if in that moment you suddenly freeze, right? And you're suddenly like emotionally completely cannot feel anything, whereas at home you were like all the emotions were running and you knew your lines and you were so good, but then in the moment that it counts you went numb, or that's your numb guardian, or you left your body in the moment that it counts and you forgot your lines but you know them off by heart. What happened? Well, something happened that triggered you to feel unsafe to stay in the body, so you went into flight mode. Or you suddenly go into like giving up, fawn, which I call it, where you just like, fuck it, do whatever you want, and you lose all agency. Or you go into fight mode and you're suddenly not listening, right? In the moment that it counts, you've already predetermined your performance. You're going to do it your way, and it doesn't matter what the other actor gives you, says, or does. You've already worked it out in your head, and so you're not present in the moment. You're not feeling the moment. You're acting in isolation by yourself. So what I've, come to understand is that the safety of the child within, when everything is at stake, right? Your reputation, your finances, your feelings of self-worth, all of your internal fears that you've carried your whole life will suddenly get triggered in the moment. And that's when your fight, flight, freeze, or fawn come in to protect you, right? They're just doing their best to make you feel safe. That's the body's innate intelligence when you were a child. And in not 24/7 did you have an attuned adult there to help you process the overwhelming feelings, then the body's innate intelligence of the amygdala, the back brain, the reptilian brain will come in to try and protect you. And the only problem is that now as an adult, when you want to feel all those juicy feelings, sadness, anger, rage, passion, confusion, insecurity, shame, in service of character, when you want to feel them, you don't always have access, because the child, fearing its, the threat of, am I going to be laughed at? Am I going to be rejected? Am I going to, this is irrational, but am I going to get in trouble if I show my full self? Are they going to think I'm too much, not enough? Am I going to be humiliated? Am I going to be shamed? Am I going to get yelled at if I show my rage? Now, of course, none of this is from your rational, mind, but those internal fears, anything that's not been processed through the body at the time that it happened, will form a calcification, a stored memory in the body, and then those memory gets triggered in those moments where everything's at stake. So that's why we work with deeply your nervous system to help you first isolate what are the triggers, what defense mechanism do you go into, fight, flight, freeze, or fawn, right? And then how does that manifest in your acting? And then we dive deeper underneath that, like, okay, so where did that get formed? Where did an event happen? You had a certain feeling response as a child and then formed a belief which now runs your life. So I'll ask you this: who of you knows that you're worthy, knows that you're good enough, right? And you deserve to be booking gigs, landing fucking great roles, having the life that you dream of? Raise your hand if you know that to be true. So maybe like half of you, and there's some cameras that are off, so I can't tell with everyone. Or maybe 2/3 of you. Awesome. Who's living that reality fully? Who's booking all of the roles that they want, on the shows that they want, having the career that they want? Okay. So there's a schism there. Something's not congruent in the body. Even though you know that you're worthy and you're valuable, something's getting in the way. So that's why we do this deep work, which is to help you find out what that is, in the moment that it counts, blocking you from accessing your full glorious self in service of character. So it's this. I don't teach mimicking. It's a brilliant tool, and a lot of us, like as kids, we learn it and we use it, and it's wonderful, and you can have a whole career based on it. Will you have the depth? Will you have the Academy Award winning performance? Will you have the audience, in tears, enraged, turned on? Not necessarily. Cerebrally, it might sound good, right? And you could get away with it and, earn a stable living from it. But is it going to satisfy you fully? So mimicking, whilst I believe it's a great tool, I don't teach it. How I teach is we're working with your quotes shit, your history, your stuff, which is actually your gold, right? And when you learn, and we teach this very sacredly, when you learn to be able to bring your cognitive awareness, your witness self, call it your spiritual self, your infinite self, your awareness, your consciousness onto your young self, right? That's when you can actually safely meet and then work with and help use your history in service of character. But you can't use anything from your background, your trauma, your pain body, even your joy, without an awareness on the trauma. Otherwise, you'll just re-traumatize yourself. And that's when acting becomes really unsafe. So we're not re-traumatizing the system. We go very, very, very slowly at your body's and your young self's own pace in order to safely first meet, make friends with, make beautiful acceptance, compassion, and love with any part of you that's been splintered off, exiled, regulated to shame, shut down, rejected. We're bringing all the parts of you home to yourself so that you can utilize them in service of character. So you can be a vessel for something greater to move through you. And that's the actor's ultimate pursuit, as far as I can see it over the years, is that feeling of when you're fucking flying because it came through you. You don't know what happened, but it just came through, and your mind wasn't there censoring things or judging you. You were just alive, responding in the right now moment in service of what the character's thinking and feeling and wanting. So that's kind of in a nutshell, like why we're doing this kind of deep work, why I don't teach mimicking. I don't teach as ifs, except one as if. Do it as if it's your last day on earth, right? You'll hear me in the workshops say that. You'll hear me on set say that to the actors, because that will give you the courage and the willingness to go deeper, go wider, go more vast within self. But I'm not teaching imagination work, but I totally believe in it and think it's a brilliant tool, but others can teach you that. I'm working with helping you to find safety inside your own body, safety in your nervous system, so that you can relax. When the actor's fully relaxed and all parts of self are loved and welcome, then you can be a vessel. Then anything can come through, given the structure of the scene and what your character's wanting, thinking, where they're going, where they've been, etc., in service of character in the moment. You don't have to work out your performance. You can actually be alive, spontaneous, electrically connected to the other actor and the environment in the right now moment, when you're filming or when you're on stage. That was a long monologue. Over to you, Des.
I only asked you one question.
That's right. Sorry, I've just been teaching, so it's all
It's
like
all
coming
downloaded.
through.
I love it. So you've answered my first 1, 2, 3, 4.
There you
Five,
go.
six. You've answered my first five questions. Well done.
Love it.
Who's 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 best suited to this work, or who is this work best suited to?
Okay. So I've worked with, Nicole Kidman, Academy Award winner, and I've worked with all the way to newbies and everyone in between, and newbies who have like, such a depth of willingness and commitment to wanting to go deep, and everyone in between, working actors, actors who had a huge career and they've left it alone for 20 years or 10 years or something, actors who've just come out of drama school, actors who are in drama school, actors who are like, it's they want to get an agent, they've got their show reel, but they're just at that precipice of entering the industry. I've worked with all people along the spectrum of experience, including like when I worked with Joseph Fiennes, he'd never used any of these tools. And I taught him every Sunday we were shooting, I'd spend half the day with him teaching him these tools. And then he would use them on set. So I've worked with the kind of big spectrum of people. And I would say mostly it's for anyone who knows that they have more to offer while they're here in a body, that they have more to give of themselves, and that they want to give so fully of their instrument, but they don't know how. If you have the willingness, you don't need to know how. I and my co-facilitator can help you get there via all the tools that we use, and you'll learn so much from the other people in the group. But it's anyone who's so willing, who's fed up, who wants more, who longs to feel more in service of character, doesn't know how. But if there's willingness, if there's a kind of like a hunger and almost like a frustration, like a fed upness of like how you've been doing it or how you've managed to get away with it, but deep down you could do better, right? But you're somehow, gliding through. Or you're just like, fuck, it can't just be this, like I often hear people say like, oh, then I just go numb and I fucking hate myself. It's like, well, firstly, we do not in any way teach or advocate for shaming self, right? You can't form a relationship of safety with your own internal system, your body, your young self, your creativity, if you're constantly shaming yourself. So there's no shaming that happens in the workshops. But it's really for anyone who wants to go deeper, who wants more access, who's done with having to fall back on old tricks, or who just feels like their performance lacks depth because they're more in their head and it's more cerebral and it sounds truthful, but they're not connected to feelings somatically.
Amazing.
I'll try to answer one question at a time.
It's all good. This is good. So when I did the masterclass back in 2016, oh, somebody's dropped out. They're coming back in. When I did the masterclass back in 2016, I think it was 2 days that we did. It's now 4. So it's clearly evolved, right?
Yeah. But Des, when you did the masterclass, we did go way into the night and then the day, right? So the reason it's evolved into 4 days is it's a deep, deep dive and we go on a big journey. And also what I noticed over time is people need integration time because so much is emotionally moving. We kind of call it, it's like watching concrete shatter. So everything that's ever happened to you in your entire life from the moment you were conceived is recorded in every cell in your body. That's why you have sense memory. You hear something, you see something, you touch something, you taste something, you smell something, and suddenly a memory is activated. That's because it lives in every cell in your body. So for that reason, suddenly we might do a practice which is designed to evoke stuff, to flush up your shit. If your shit is in your awareness, you can put, anything that comes into your cognition can start to dissolve. If it's out of your awareness and in your unconscious, it's hard to work with. You can't work with it unless you're working with it dangerously in the unconscious realm. So we're flushing up purposefully a lot of your stuff. It's not about polished scenes. You have to do scene work and scene prep and prep the scene, and you put the scenes up many, many times. But it's not about like getting the scene perfect. It's about, wow, I go numb. Or wow, fuck, I go into fight mode and I don't fucking listen. Or wow, I give up in the acting, I fawn. Or wow, I go into flight and I leave my body constantly. So we're helping you to identify what the mechanisms are, and then going deeper onto that to where you learnt it, and giving the kind of pain body of that stuff metaphorically back, right? We're metaphorically letting go of that stuff. So it's intense. It's emotionally intense. I always say to people, this workshop's not for the faint-hearted. This is if you really want to go deep and you want the depth in your acting. Because how you do your life, the degree in which you can inhabit and freely express an emotion in your life, is the same degree in which you'll be able to inhabit it and freely express it in your acting, because your nervous system can't tell the difference between acting and real life. If you're acting and you have to be in fear, you'll have adrenaline running, right? If you're acting and you have to fall in love, you'll have a dopamine release. So your nervous system can't tell the difference. So unless you're mimicking, you can't act anything you haven't fully connected with, accepted, given love to, and then fully expressed in your life. So that's why we're working deeply personal work, which needs integration time. You need time to calibrate. You need time to rest. No joke, in the workshop, we set up a bed, like a big queen size bed in the space, and people go and have naps because it's emotionally a lot on your nervous system. And so we like self-care. We teach a lot of self-care. You can't do this depth and degree of work, like the emotional rigor of this work, without taking care of your nervous system. Otherwise, your young self will be like, fuck off, talk to the hand, it's too much, I'm drained, I'm done. So you have to replenish the young self, which is why we do things like naps. We have very strict boundaries in the workshop. There's no violence towards self, the other, the space, the furniture, or anyone else. And we also have no touch, so that you can deeply go through all of the somatic practices and unravel, uncoil things that have been stored in your body for many, many years, without having to also deal with, oh, and now I've got to hug that person every time I do the scene. Or now in the break, someone wants to come and pat me on the back because they're really emotionally triggered by your stuff, and they want to shut you the fuck up by giving you that hug. Are you okay? Right? But they're really telegraphing, this is too much for me, stop feeling. Right? So we just remove touch in the workshop. The sexuality work is all about embodied touch. That's a different workshop. But in Raw Truth, we take out the touch, we take out any violence, any fights in the sequences, any kind of physicality towards self, so that you can fully come home to self, with an understanding that 1/3 of you will have experienced sexual abuse or molestation or rape in your life, and 1/3 violence. It's 2/3 of the room with a lot of stuff that lives in the body that can get activated at any moment. So we reduce that trigger so that we can flush up all of your stuff in the processes, which eventually, the thing that I see is that the more stuff that can move out and release, the less you're living a lie of all the voices you imploded. The voices that, you took on from childhood of, you're too much, you're not enough, you're not worthy, you should be grateful, the world is unsafe, you're unsafe, your sexuality is too dark. Like, they're all the voices that we often take on and then live our life by, and they run our lives. And so we're flushing up and through and releasing those voices. And what happens then is more safety in the body. The more safety there is, the more relaxation there is, the more permission for all the feelings to come through you in service of character, to be a vessel for something greater than you.
Amazing, Kim. Thank you so much for that. You mentioned the scenes, but can you just maybe talk through, are they only performed like day one, day four, or because
I'll,
obviously,
I'll talk to that in
talk,
a second. I
yeah,
just want to check in with anyone. it give me a thumbs up if you feel like you're understanding what I'm saying,
Maybe do a virtual thumbs up
or like a high thumb just so I can
so that we
see
can
you.
see it on the screen.
Okay, awesome. Roman, didn't see. Oh, you have a virtual thumb. Wow, cool. Okay. Great. Okay, because I just wanted to slow down if anyone feels like, wow, she's talking really fast and she's saying a lot of stuff. Okay. So in terms of the scenes, you about 2 weeks before the workshop starts, maybe 2.5 weeks, is the final application day. Then you all send in your show reel. There's an application form, which is basically talking about a little bit about what you know, where your experience level is at. But mostly what I'm interested in is your mental health. Are you in a place of stability in your mental health that you can do this deep work? And we work with people with all sorts of, you know, anxiety, depression. A lot of actors live with anxiety, ADHD, occasionally bipolar. We're just trying to understand what's going on in your personal kind of mental health to know if you can do the deep work. There's an interview that I have with you to discuss that to make sure you're really ready for this. Then I look at your show reel, I watch your show reel, I read your bio, I read why you want to do the course. And then if you know, in the interview, we both feel like, yep, this works for you, then I cast you in a scene that I think is going to trigger your shit, right? So we can flush it up, so we can work with it. And then I cast you with someone who's at a similar kind of level of openness in their acting, and ideally who's also going to flush up your stuff in a good way, but in a safe container where you can support each other in the stuff coming up. Yeah. Then you get about 2 weeks to prep. In that prep time, you're going to be rehearsing by yourself. Ruta! You're going to be rehearsing by yourself and also with your scene partner, ideally as much as possible in person, but you know, people come from all over Europe and the States to the London workshop. So sometimes you'll rehearse virtually, but you have to rehearse at least once in person at, you know, on if you're coming in from out of town on the day before the workshop, right? So that you can get an in-person rehearsal to block your scene. Then on the first day of the workshop, there's a intro kind of thing where we set all the boundaries and get clear on the intention, and then you put up your scene. So the duo will put up their scene in front of the whole group. We have a maximum of 14 actors, and then I think it's either 4 or 6 auditors, so about, you know, maximum 20 people plus me and my co-facilitator. And I give you feedback right after your scene, about 20 minutes each, and then everyone puts up their scenes, and then we go into 2.5 kind of, well, probably more like 2 and a bit days full somatic, you know, and craft practices. And every time you do a practice, you immediately run the scene afterwards as a group. So all of you are in this space. We have a big space running the scene at the same time. So every time you're learning a new practice, you assimilate it through the body. All right. You experience the practice in the right now moment in the body. And it's really powerful seeing how the tool that you've just learned translates into the art, into the acting, because that's what it's all in service of ultimately, how you become a vessel for character. Then on the last day, the entire day is spent, minus a practice or two in the morning to get you back in your body after a night's sleep, is spent putting the scenes up again. When you put the scenes up on the last day, you put the scene up, I give you a bit of feedback, and then I work one-on-one with every single person for about 20 minutes each, right? So you get me one-on-one in the space. In that time, the other actors are often involved in that practice, what I'll do, or they're witnessing and just holding space for the actor who's working with me. The other actor from the scene is working with my co-facilitator, plus one person from the group goes as a witness, and they go off into another room and do a practice. So then both actors get a turn with me and with my co-facilitator, and we come back into the space. Then they run the scene a second time, and then I give feedback. And then the very last part of that day is an integration practice. So you're running the scene constantly and you're performing it 3 times. There you go.
Amazing. That's very clear. Thank you so much. You mentioned, and I'm gonna make this the last question so we can open it to the floor. But you
Yeah.
mentioned auditors there. This is quite a unique auditing experience, as I had because I had this auditing experience myself last year when we worked here in London. Do you want to speak a little bit about that? About
Yeah.
what
So,
like because some people may be in a position where they'd rather audit. But
yeah.
that's still a very deep experience.
Yeah. So, the auditing experience, I would say, is the best deal in town because you get the entire workshop for a lot cheaper price. The thing is that's different is you don't perform and you don't work one on one with me, right? Except for one practice. You get a bit of me one on one. But otherwise, as an auditor, you do every single group practice and every single solo practice. And then if there's another auditor in the space, you also do duo work with them every time we run a new practice or with my co-facilitator, right? If there's just one auditor or there's 3 auditors, 2 will work together and 1 will work with my co-facilitator when we have a duo practice. So the auditors have a completely immersive experience. And over the years, we've refined, like I've been running workshops, this workshop for 11 years now on the sideline of when I'm in between making films. And I'm so grateful for it because I get my instruments get so honed by working with actors constantly. But what we found over the years is originally the auditors would watch, and then it became really apparent that because so much emotion is getting flushed up and moved, that they were getting like antsy, right? They were getting like, fuck, like I want to do it too. And also triggered. And so they were getting triggered by other people's breakthroughs and other people's stuff coming up. So they wanted to move it in their body. So then we made it okay. The auditor's experience is immersive. It's experiential. It's somatic. So the auditors do all the practices that the actors do. They just don't perform. So that's the difference.
Amazing. That's wonderful. I think we should open it to the floor. So I think the best way to do this is if people raise their virtual hands, so I can take questions from the participants list. And no question is too silly. You can ask whatever you like about the work. So Christy, would you like to come in?
Yeah, thank you. Hi, Kim. Thanks for this session. I was just really interested when you were talking about the sort of interview process to see whether people are right for the work. And have you ever been in a situation where you felt like an actor was absolutely ready, and then in the middle of the work itself, it transpires that they're not, and perhaps they even thought they were ready as well, and then something has been triggered, which is maybe sort of unexpected to them because of course so much lies dormant, doesn't it, until a trigger can happen sometimes. Just wondered if that had ever been
Yeah.
your experience.
Yeah, I have in, running this, I can't tell you how many hundreds of workshops I've done, but I have a couple of times experienced where I've I've experienced where someone hasn't disclosed their mental health even in the interview, and then it's
Mm,
become apparent that they
yeah.
have a really strong mental health issue. Like, for instance, one person once had a deep psychosis, and it just wasn't safe for them. It wasn't safe. It was triggering so much stuff. They were heavily medicated as well, and so they weren't. There wasn't as much attunement to their own nervous system, and so it was a very unsafe for them, but unsafe for the group. And in
Mm,
that way, I'll just step in and we have a conversation. I refund on a pro rata basis for any days that are incomplete, because your mental health and your emotional safety is my utmost care. So if anyone was ever in a practice and they overstepped a boundary, I'll stop the practice in the moment that it's happening, because to me, I don't care whether a scene's running. It's the same for me when I'm shooting on a film. The actor's mental health and well-being is more important than the film,
Yeah.
right? So we're not ever wanting anyone to feel emotionally like they're at risk, or that they're unsafe in the
Mm.
work. That's just not okay for me. So it's very rare that that happens. I've also had the experience twice where someone has pulled out because they're not ready to let go of certain things, and that's okay. I
Mm.
don't need anyone to get anywhere. And I honor that if someone's like, this is too much for me, I'm not ready, I don't want to go here, then that's completely like, honor yourself. That's fine. So it's very much it's very like autonomous. Like you're taking your power back, and your power is your ability to be able to be with self,
Mm.
right? To be able to attune to, oh, that's a no for me. Like Des has seen it, like sometimes an actor, because we will offer you all of these practices. And I always say to people, at any moment, say no. If anything feels like, oh, I don't want to go here, or that's too much for me, or I don't want to feel this. You finding your no, I always say you just got your money's worth, because that's the most powerful thing you can have is your no. And the more you can honor your no, the more your young self will trust you that you have my back. Wow, you're actually listening to my no, rather than overriding self and then getting yourself in a situation where you're resentful or unsafe and doing shit you don't want to do. And I've heard about it from other people doing other work in acting class, situations where they've come away feeling really shamed by someone or really fucked up. And so you finding your no is actually going to give you more of a connection to your young self, and eventually more yeses inside yourself. The more you can state your boundary, the more your young self's like, God, now I feel the boundaries are secure. Now I can fucking unleash hell. I can let go. I can play. So,
Mm.
yeah, I hope
Yeah.
that answers your question.
Yeah, it does. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
Awesome.
Christy. Lucas.
Hi Kim,
Hey,
Lucas, how
Lucas.
you doing?
Good.
Thanks for the insight so far. But I've got two questions, if that's all right.
Yeah.
Firstly, just obviously with the truth and rawness in your techniques and your approach, and I've read that you're like the actor's director, so to speak. What when an actor finds that rawness and that truth in the moment and is living authentically in a scene during a moment, if the physical or the emotional sort of instinct for the actor differs from your vision as a director, how do you bridge the gap, and or how does your methods and techniques help bridge the gap, being able to switch? Because it's easy to say play happy and then do happy a different way if you're not being as connected, but how do you bring the truth but authentically being able to do it in different ways, I suppose, if it doesn't match what you want it to look like?
Yeah. I mean, firstly, I would always ask a director, can you tell me the intention of this moment?
Mm.
Right? Because you can't play an emotion, right? But if you can get the director to be like, oh, I want you to flirt with him, or I want you to berate her, or I want you to cajole him, or I want you to annihilate them, right? If the intention is clear to you, then you can, like, let's say the more emotions, because I believe we have every single trait. Some of them are just more owned and some
Mm.
of them are more disowned. And part of the Raw Truth workshop is you start to bringing home more of the traits inside of you, i.e., you might bring home your rage, and suddenly you can play a villain who's really fucking angry. Or you might bring home your shame, and you can play a character like Michael Fassbender played in the brilliant Abby. Can't remember her surname, but the film Shame,
Oh, yeah.
right? So you want to be able to bring home the different flavors. And so if a director gives you clarity of intention, you ask them, what's the intention that you want? That will help you to go for what you want from the other character, right? Does that make sense? As soon as
Yeah.
you're actively playing your objective, that's going to shift the emotional quality that moves through you.
Yeah.
We also teach, personalization work. We teach sense memory. We teach a bunch of things that you may have tapped into in your work history before. We teach it in a unique, quite a special way, but that gives you more ability to access more flavors of self. And then the other thing that becomes so beautiful is that, let's say the director's like, let's say they're not very sensitive and they're like, oh, I don't want it like that, I want it like this. It also gives you the ability to differentiate from the director and be like, wow, they really lack sensitivity, but I got you, young self. I love you. That was awesome, that take, well done. And now we're going to invoke this. It gives you the ability to take on feedback. Sometimes you'll receive it in a way that's conducive to making you want to open more, and sometimes you'll receive it from a really unconscious person in a really unconscious way, and it'll help you to be able to not merge with that person, not take on their shit, but to stay with self, to be able to self-soothe your young self so that you can keep opening, so that you can keep giving, so that you can keep trying new things without taking it personally.
Amazing, thank you. And just the second part to that, I suppose, kind of is these techniques, because obviously we're in a day and age of self-tapes and things like that. And sometimes you get a shit reader, sometimes you get a good reader and things like that. I suppose, just a bit of insight into how this sort of technique can help with even landing the job or even getting in the room, in an authentic place.
I'll just give you a very quick kind of couple of things on that. So firstly, one of the beautiful things about doing this work is you then come away with 13 other actors to do self-tapes with, right? You come away with tribe. And so suddenly you've got the audition, it's tomorrow or today, and you WhatsApp group, you'll be like, hey guys, I've got an audition, who can help me, who can jump online for this self-tape? Boom. Now you've got actors that aren't shit, that totally are versed in the material, that you feel safe with, that you can work with. So that's one thing that can really help. The second thing it's going to give you is way more ability to ask for what you need. I would need, or reader, for you to put your face right next to the lens of the camera for the self-tape, because most actors will put their face here because it's comfortable, but you want it here because you want the eye line super tight, so that when the audience, the director, casting, producers are watching it, they're super connected because your eye line is tight. Right? So that's going to be number 2, tribe. Second, your ability to ask for what you need. And then the other thing is you're going to learn, this is the third thing, so that you don't have to merge with their shitty performance. Let's say they're giving you nothing. You still keep giving. You've moved on the checkerboard. You still keep giving from the fullness of you, no matter what you're giving, because sometimes you'll be working opposite a tennis ball on the end of a pole when it's blue screen, right? And they're giving you as much as the reader's giving you, right? That shitty reader. And so you're like, okay, I'm going to have to give all of me, knowing what I need to service character in this moment. So even if the reader's giving you nothing, you're giving the full response because you've laid in triggers, which will teach you how to do, into the different objects, issues, peoples, places, timeframes, and events to trigger your stuff to get you where you need to be emotionally to service the scene. So the other actor can be giving you diddly squat and you're bringing it fully because you're working off your own internal, what I call planting landmines, to be able to service the scene. Amazing. So in that way, it relieves this pressure of like, I've got to feed off you. Now, the other thing is you'll then, because of the self-worth that increases after the workshop, you'll start drawing in actors to do your self-tapes with that you fucking love, that rock your world, Lucas, that you're like, oh my God, I'm so grateful. I'm so lucky. Look at these amazing people that I'm drawing in. So that's also going to shift too. So there's quite a few factors in how that it translates to doing the self tapes. But a big one is you start getting what you need. You start asking for your needs to be met. How does it translate on set?
Yeah.
So here's the awesome thing. It's so fun. And it's starting to, like, I'm seeing it now all over the world where actors use these tools. And I always say to the actor, do you think the cinematographer says, I'm sorry, guys, I'm not going to take that 5 minutes that I need to fix the lighting. I'm not going to do that because you're all waiting. No, they're like, fuck it, I need 5 minutes. So we're waiting on lighting for 5 minutes, right? And then the costume person needs to fix your dress or your outfit or whatever. They're going to do it. And we're going to wait on costume. Or the sound guy needs to, or the sound woman needs to fix your mic. They're going to take their moment. But somehow there's this crazy myth that the actor has to go 0 to 100 on action. No. When they tell you you've got 5 minutes till we're shooting, you're starting to prep the instrument and you do whatever it takes, because the internal self-worth that's been activated and come home to in the workshop has you, doesn't matter where you are, who's there, in service of something greater than you, the story and all the characters you're representing a voice for. Do your prep wherever you are. Now, that doesn't mean you're disturbing everyone else's experience by, shouting at the top of your lungs, but you might be putting someone on the wall that you've got issues with, that you need to fire it up in order to go into the scene with rage, right? So you might say to the first AD, hey, I'm going to be making some sound over here, right? Just give me a heads up when you're ready. Or you'll tell the sound recorders, I'm going to be making some loud sounds, so you're going to please turn your cans down so that you don't get your ears blasted. And you're going to take up more space on the set. And now what I'm seeing on different sets around the world with different actors that I've coached is that they'll be like, no, I need a minute when everyone else is ready. How fucking dare they honor their own process? But they do, which is so fucking awesome. They're suddenly owning what they need and taking that space. Because you might then have to run the scene 7 times to get the performance, when you could have just taken 1 minute to work up your instrument to where you need it to be to nail it in one go, and then do a second take for safety. Right? So this is all practical stuff. I'm filming between workshops, right? Every couple of years I'm making a film. The rest of the time I'm developing, the rest of the time I'm coaching. And when I'm on set, I'm like to the actor, do what you need in the moment that it counts. Now you're going to try and work seamlessly with the crew to be doing your prep while they're getting ready. You might put headphones on and have a fucking dance. You might be doing your physicality work on the spot, but you're going to claim your space and do what you need as if you had all the freedom in the world, Aidan.
That sounds lovely. I'm working on, not on sets, but with a lot of people who talk about set stuff right now. So it's quite interesting.
I was just to share this. I was just coaching 3 actors. It started with 1 on a huge, biggest series that New Zealand had ever done. This huge series. And then after like week 1, I then like suddenly now I'm coaching 2. And then after week 2, then I'm coaching 3. And then I coached these actors through this whole series, which was a massive production with a lot of pressure. And about halfway through the series, the head honcho, the showrunner, came up to one of the actors and said, you have, whatever you're doing, you have changed the culture on this set. You have raised the bar of all of the actors who are now doing what they need to get the performance. Thank you. But that meant he was willing to do his prep in front of 300 extras and take up the space because he was serving something greater than him. And that'll always give you the courage when you're doing it for, like, all the men who've ever been shamed or oppressed, or all the women who have ever been put down for their wild sexuality, right? If you do it for something bigger than you, it will give you courage.
It's about folks thinking mainly about stage work.
Yep.
And the question is, to what extent does the workshop and the process and the insights help you know what is going to happen in the next scene? Or does it paradoxically, absorbing all of the ideas and experiences in the workshop, does it make you less certain what's going to happen because you're more open to all the raw freedom of all the possible ways that a scene could go?
Can you put your camera on, Dominique?
Okay,
Awesome.
there you go.
So you answered your own question.
Yeah.
Definitely version 2. So what the work does is it gives you more safety to feel moment by moment. And that way, as long as you've done the craft work, which we teach a bunch of craft work, and that's also work that you can learn in other places in the industry, as long as you're clear on what your character wants, what your obstacles are, what their fears are, internal dilemma, gait, accent, props, objects, physicality, as long as you all know all of that, then the work, what it helps you to do is to be safe enough in your nervous system to feel yourself and the other actors in the moment, on set, on stage. And that way, the most beautiful thing happens is that you feel an unpredictability, the most delicious unpredictability inside yourself, which forms the electricity. And this is case in point when I was directing Noomi Rapace on Angel of Mine, a beautiful feature film with Yvonne Strahovski and Luke Evans. I taught her all of these practices. And she rang me mid-shoot and said, Kim, it's the most incredible feeling. I know everything that my character wants and where they're going, and I know the script backwards, but I never know what's going to happen moment by moment. Rather than when you've tried to work it out, I'm going to do this action in this moment and feel this in that moment, and you've got so clever that you're in your fucking head and you can't feel anything moment by moment, right? So that's the beauty of it, is it gives you safety in the body without leaving, because when you leave your body or you go numb or you fawn or you go into fight mode and you're not listening, that's when it becomes disconnected, non-specific, and inherently unsafe for you and the other actor because you're not consciously grounded in your body. So the electricity starts to happen. Yeah? That's when it gets really electric.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you.
Amazing. Thanks, Dominic.
Great question / statement.
I'm going to just throw it open for one more question. Is there anybody who has a burning desire? Lucas has another question. Lucas, come in.
Yeah, why not? I suppose just for career longevity, because obviously it's a career that has ups, downs, and everything like that. But for someone that's maybe in the early stages of their career and to sort of like avoid, and obviously wanting to avoid that sort of plateauing period, what's the common reason you see like actors' growth slowing or stopping, and how does Raw Truth sort of help them break through that ceiling where they feel like they've hit a bit of a wall in terms of where they can grow and how they can grow? I mean, we're always doing it every day, but just specifically, how does your practice demonstrate ways of pushing through those ceilings more effectively, I suppose, to keep curious and to keep building and to keep growing in different aspects?
I think there's 2 facets to your question, so I'm going to answer both of them. The first one is when actors use their personal life but don't practice doing that safely, the young self, as I mentioned before, will go fuck off and shut down the system, because the young self will feel like you're just milking me and expending all of this energy and vulnerable feelings, but without restoring me, without giving back to me, without loving me, without like nurturing me, without praising me, right? And then they'll get tired, cranky, pissed off, and they'll shut down. So that's one of the reasons that happens. The other reason is we can get very comfortable, in our pain body, in our pain. It's painful, but it's familiar. And a lot of people stay stuck there because it feels very known to them, and it gives a voice to their pain, i.e., I'm not good enough. See, I'm not getting the auditions, or see, I'm not landing the roles. See. So the pain of old that never got attuned to by the parent, by the conscious parent, and your parents all did their best given what happened to them at the time. But when we don't get that attunement, our pain body starts to run our life, trying to play it out everywhere and everyone we meet. So what we do in the workshop is we attune to that pain body. We give it a voice consciously. And when you start to give it a voice and let it move all the feelings that are associated with that voice, then it doesn't have to run your life. That's when you start having a choice point, right?
Uh-huh.
So it's kind of like the Anais Nin quote, and the day came when it became more painful to stay closed in a bud than the risk it took to open. Right? There becomes a day where it's so excruciating and so fucking lonely and so suffocatingly dead and boring and dry that you suddenly want to take a risk. And that's why I said the ingredients that you need to do Raw Truth is willingness. There needs to be a willingness that something has to change. I want to be able to shine in my full self.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
That answer your question?
Yeah, it does. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Any
What?
last question from someone who feels shy but really wants to say something, or just say something? You don't even have to ask a question.
Absolutely. Georgia.
Hiya. I guess it kind of comes from the last question, but I feel like sometimes when I go to use a memory or something like that, there can be a sort of limitation on what the emotion that you can draw from it before you become familiar or not numb to it, but that sort of sense. I'm just wondering what sort of technique does your workshop use the technique so that you can continue to
Yes.
bring up those
The
emotions
first
and
thing,
access them?
just as an offering, if you say if
I,
you were to rephrase that whole thing as like, I notice that when I use a memory, I often become, you'll feel it more. You'll start to feel more. So just in your life for everyone, instead of saying you know, when you do this, you do that, you experience this. If you say you'll be starting to presence your own feelings more. The second thing is slow down. So when you slow down, you'll feel more. Only at the final moment of on-set shooting or the final rehearsal before going on stage do you add the given circumstances of pace, the shape, the lid of the scene that contains the scene, right? So if you slow down your rehearsal process, you'll feel more, literally feeling each sentence breath by breath. And then the third thing that I'll go into deeply in the workshop is when you list the consequences of any objective that you've paralleled, that your character is having, that you've experienced in your own life, past or present, that still holds a charge when you list the consequences. Because remember, everything that ever happened to you is stored in every cell in your body. So if you list the consequences of that memory, that time when you wanted forgiveness, that time when you wanted that person to want you, that time when you wanted that person to obey you, and the consequences of not getting what you wanted, it will give you so much fuel. And we show you in the workshop how to do that, right? How to actively do it. So I'll use, in demonstrating these tools, I'll use the same memory for one particular practice every single time. Every single time, pure livid rage will move through my body and tears will stream down my face. Same memory, because I list the consequences. I get in touch with the impact in my life. We go into it in deeper detail in the workshop, but because actors say to me, like, if I do this somatic work, how will I have any shit to work with? I'll be all therapized out and I'll be all zandy and I won't like have any fuel. I'm like, don't you fucking worry. There's so much pain body in all the receptors of your cells. All you have to do is activate the consequences, and it'll all come simmering back to life. It's a great question. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. I believe we are complete.